sneeze there. Okay. Just getting everything set up here. I think we are live. Might need to, oh, it says no data. Okay, now it says excellent condition. Excellent connection. All right, before we do that, let me just... Oh, hello, Cyborg. I'll just be back. We will begin shortly. Oh, it's too bad you can't stay for too long. But I'll try and discuss. I just need to blow my nose right quick. Well, I'll just blow my nose right quick, and then I'll start talking. So I'll be right back. Let me just set it up here. Be right back. Let me do this. Brought the tissue box with me. Cool. I think somebody's about to walk in. My wife. Let me make sure I mute for that right quick. Okay, let's see here. Am I on? Yeah, I think I'm good now. So yeah, let me know if the audio levels are good, and if they're bad, then just let me know. I think I got everything going on. Still trying to use this GoPro, and yeah, I'll just get started. This is the Black Ponder. Welcome, the host. I'm Neil Trotter. Let me see this. Let me see here. Is that better? No, that makes it more blue. What's about this? Oh no, that's really bad. It's like a negative from a film. About that. Is that how I used to have it? Okay. Yeah, we'll just do that one. Okay. And okay, but I think it's lagged a bit behind the video. Damn. The audio is lagging. Why? I thought I set that properly. Let me see here. Maybe I need to set the lag more. That is unfortunate. still trying to make that happen. So now, how bad is it? It must be, how bad is the lag? Oh wait, never mind, it's not lagged anymore. Okay. Well, let me put it back where I was, because that was figured out how to deal with that. And so do that. I might have changed it up. Okay. Yeah, I think I did a little change. So if it's lagging again, just tell me, and I think I can change it to not lagging. But if it's, just let me know. Okay, so yeah, the Black Ponder YouTube channel, philosophy. We talk about philosophical texts, but mostly that's what we do here on the channel. But sometimes we do live streams, and that's cool. And today's topic is Republic and democracy. This is a request from a viewer. A viewer was like, I forgot who actually asked for it. Was it one of y'all? I forgot. But yeah, somebody asked like, what's the? Can you talk about Republic? Okay, I can do that. And then Jeremy Borno asked, hello. Did you read the Republic book? Yes, I have a video on it. Just search my YouTube channel, and I got a video about it. Yeah, so the Republic is is very famous because it has that story of the cave allegory with Plato's allegory of the cave, where that's that famous, like one of the most famous philosophy stories, where these people are like chained up in a cave their whole life, and they only see like the outside world through shadows. People are walking around in the outside world, but they only see their shadow. So they develop like this, understanding like, oh, they're just shadows. Like, oh, they must be some mythical, like godlike creatures. They just see them as shadows. But then one of them escapes. I talk about this in depth in the video. One of them escapes and goes outside, and then discovers, oh, it's not shadows. It's just people walking around. And it's a whole new world out here. But then the person outside gets so overwhelmed by it's just so much to handle that like, whoa, it's like it's so many more people, and it's like so many different points of view, and it's like the world is much bigger than I thought. So what happens, he goes back in the cave, chains himself back up, and just pretends like I didn't see nothing. and then he even tells, I think he communicates with the other chained people. Like, yeah, I saw that. And they're like, yeah, we'll just stay in the cave. We'll just pretend. And it's Plato saying, like, yeah, a lot of people do that. A lot of people, when they confronted with the actual complexity of reality, they decide, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. So I'm just gonna like pretend like it's not as, which is pretty, that, and then I go in depth about that in the video. So check it out. What do you like about this cornerstone of? What do you like about this cornerstone of Western culture? What do you mean? Cornerstone of Western culture? What do you mean, like currently? Like, what do you like about Western culture today? Is that what you're asking? Or are you asking like, what do you think about that book, which is a cornerstone of Western culture? Oh, I think you're asking, like, what do you think of Plato's Republic? Yeah, I'll give you a nutshell. Is it a cornerstone? Yeah, it is. It did change a lot of philosophical thought. He had some good ideas in it. There's also some ideas that, aren't, the best. Like, the other thing about the Republic, Plato talks about philosopher kings. That's the whole thing. He believes like, oh, the people who should rule the world, rule society should be philosophers, and you should like, separate society based off of different categories, and one of them should be philosophers. And it goes in depth about like, from the day they're born, they should be separated from their parents, and then they just basically raised up like a commune, and so they're kind of disattached. They don't have one family, one parent. They just have multiple parents, and then they learn all about philosophy, and that's it. And then once they're mature enough, then they rule the world, or they rule society as using philosophy alone. And I mean, I don't know if that's because philosophy doesn't solve all problems, right? So I don't know. It does put a lot of weight on philosophy, and you do need more things than philosophy to run a society. I think, but that's another thing I talked about in that video. And then, what else you say? I enjoy the dialogues about justice. Okay, cool. It was me who requested the video of today. Okay, great. Is the fire in the cave allegory knowledge? Yeah, I mean, you can take it however, in my opinion. I guess Plato was thinking more about, basically knowledge. But I think you could take it from basically anything. Knowledge or, awareness of, it's just like a lot of things, it could be, I guess knowledge or awareness, I mean, there's so many examples, I mean, I could just throw you an example that just comes to my mind right now, the concept of veganism, right? Where, you're raised to just eat meat. And then eventually you find out, oh, actually, like, there's this whole industry where it's, very bad on the environment, and it causes a lot of animals to suffer tremendously. And, you can go into depth about watching the videos and all that horror of that. And so now you have the knowledge. What are you going to do with it? You're going to, like, be like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to pretend I didn't see that. I'm just going to continue to eat meat, right? Which is what lots of people do. I mean, honestly, like, that story applies directly to, like, that's a perfect example of, like, that allegory is, like, people will see things that are horrible or, like, oh, okay. And so, like, people know, like, how damaging the meat industry. A lot of people do know, but they just like, yeah, I'm just gonna do an about face about that, and we're just not gonna talk about that.
Another example was slavery.
Yeah, my wife brings up slavery. That's another one. And we could go on and on. And then some people will start doing mental gymnastics. I like to use that term, mental gymnastics, about justifying. Like with slavery, people was like, well, who's going to do the labor? You got to have somebody do the labor, or like, well, we just live in a society where the people are lesser than other people. So you just have to deal with that. And same thing with the meat industry, where people will be like, well, you still need to eat meat. What about the protein? Or they'll start talking about, well, actually, when you grow vegetables, you're actually killing like insects and stuff. And then they'll start like doing all this. I would call it mental gymnastics instead of just like confronting the truth and being like, no, actually, this is a horrible thing, and we really need to. Like, let's not explain this away. Let's, like, face this head on. Like, accept responsibility for the situation. I'm sorry, I keep looking at my microphone as if it's the camera. So that's what was going. I need to look at the camera, which is right there. And you have, Plato did... Jeremy says, Plato did have a good point in seeing rulers as serving the people. It must have been revolutionary during antiquity. Yeah, I mean, that was, I know the Greeks are, known as the inventors of democracy. I mean, did they really invent democracy? I don't know. There might have been. I'm sure there was. I would bet money there was probably other cultures, which we don't know about, that was doing democratic societies. We just don't, that's not in recorded record or something. But I think then, like a lot of that society back in those days was like, whoa, for the people? Really? I thought rulers are just divine, chosen ones that just rule just so we can serve them. So there's that. But it's kind of funny, right? It's kind of funny. But I mean, you do have a good point. But it's like, whoa, what a concept! Like a person who's in charge is supposed to like serve the people that they're in charge of. Right? Like, whoa, wow, that's a crazy idea. It's funny. Like, yeah, obviously, right? But no, but yeah, I understand. Like back in those times, maybe. But still, sometimes I don't know. Sometimes we maybe we give too much credit, where it's like, what a concept, instead of like, oh, the ruler's not supposed, the ruler just does things to prop themselves up. It's like, no, actually a ruler, somebody who's in charge or who's the leader, the point is to help the welfare of others, right? Which is not some like, it's not rocket science, right? so I don't know. And then Jeremy Boner says, I think the Bible must definitely have taken lessons from the Republic. Yeah, probably. Yeah, we like to. That's another thing. The Bible is like a sacred document. That was the very first. But, as you know, we understand that the Bible is just a text in history, and it draws from like all types of other traditions and, religions that were before Christianity. So, yeah, definitely, I'm sure like a lot of Greek thought was put into when the Bible was written. Absolutely. And then Cyborg 6, that vegan example is a really good take on that allegory. There's a ton of examples you could fit in there. Yeah, that's what you could, so many. And I think it mainly tries to convey blissful ignorance even when you actually know the facts, right? Another example is what's going on in Israel right now with the Israel versus Gaza war, and how like I live in the American South, where that's like everybody's like pro-Israel and everybody's ignoring how Palestinians are treated, right? And that's just not even like the blinders are off. And once you show them like, well, actually what's going on in when the group Hamas attacked Israel in that horrible situation, that wasn't just some isolated event. It was based off of like imperialist colonial activity that Israel is doing. But you start talking about that and people are like, no, let me go back in the cave. Right? I don't want to talk about that. But you can just keep going on and on with the examples. And then what else is going on? That example, yeah. And then Jeremy says, aren't humans by nature supposed to be just plant eaters? I don't know. I think, are they? I think human beings are what they call omnivores. we could just eat many types of things. Yeah, we can eat any types of things. Nature is one thing, but after a while you have to. That's another thing. Like people kind of lean toward like, well, by nature this, and like naturally we're this, and sometimes people even say like, well, naturally we are something that's good. That's because some people will defend bad behavior and say, well, it's our nature, but then other people will bounce back like, well, actually it's not our nature. But for me, it's like that's kind of beside the point. It's like, well, we know what's right and what's wrong, right? So even if what's wrong, maybe what we're doing, maybe things that we're doing that are wrong are in our nature, and we need to like work those things out of our nature. Like we need to work on ourselves so that we can be better. Like so. Our nature isn't necessarily like what we should pursue, right? So it just depends, right? So that's another thing. Sometimes we do need to work on ourselves. And then Cyborg says, there was probably for sure unrecorded, unofficial democracies before then. Yeah, I think so. I don't like censorship of arts that Plato advocated to Socrates and or that person. I actually never said that name out loud. Galacon. I don't know. I forget. You'll have to forgive my Greek, though. Yeah, I mean the book is not perfect. The book is not perfect. So, what's your opinion on the difference between a republic and democracy? Oh, it's just um, I don't. So, a republic is a representative democracy, right? So, a republic is some people vote for a person to represent them, right? And as opposed to like monarchy, or like somebody is just born a certain way, or like a aristocracy or something like that, based off of class or like some divine thing. So that's a republic. And then the difference between and then democracy is just majority rule. Majority rule, right? So both are in alignment with each other, but there's a difference. But so I don't want to get into what they call that word, when you start like focusing too heavy on the words and terminology, because you can do that. That's what I don't want to do. Like, well, the difference between democracy or no, it's not. So what we need to do is we need to understand how to implement both a republic and a democracy in a way that's healthy and that's indicative to a great society, right? We need to use both ways of governing, ways of organizing a society, and so that's the key, and I guess that's what I kind of want to talk about really for this topic. And then, what is this? Cyborg 2.0 says, exactly, seeing people here in the U.S. just ignore the genocidal attack on Palestinians in the historical context is just wild. Yeah. That's Plato's allegory right there. You're seeing it right there. You're saying, like, chain me back up. Let me look at those shadows. I don't want to see the complexity of that situation. Semantics. I don't want to, because that's one of the reasons why I started this YouTube channel, because one of the things that in philosophy people get too caught up in semantics, and then is like, what are we even talking about here? Like, were we talking about vocabulary, or are we actually talking about ideas, right? So yeah. Then you say, we're omnivores, but I don't blame vegans for not wanting to eat meat because of the unethical industry of meat. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, in our nature we can eat meat, but just because we're naturally, we can do that doesn't mean we should, right? And I'm like, sometimes you do have to fight your nature. It just depends. Sometimes you don't, and sometimes you do. We got to establish what's right and what's wrong. Right? That's more important than what's like natural. It's like, well, what's right and what's wrong. Now, what's right and what's wrong, you got to go into a whole discussion about that, ethical discussion, right? Because oftentimes that's not clear cut, right? But it's true. And then Jeremy asks, would you say that the United States is a strong and complex republic? No. I would not say it is a strong and complex republic. No, I would say like the United States of America is a what do you call it when it's when an elite class is basically calling all the shots. What is that called? Because that's what America is, right? Aristocracy? I don't know, but you say aristocracy, and I think like Louis. You think like rich people, but I mean that's basically I'm thinking like French people with nice fancy suits and shit from the 1400s. But what's I think the other one is oligarchy. Man, that's it. Oligarchy, I think it's more like that means companies running it. Yeah, oligarch. Oh, yep. Y'all saying it. Let me look it up right quick. Oligarchy. A small group of people having control of a country. Yeah, yep. That's a good enough word. And what's let me see what aristocracy is. Aristocracy. The highest class in certain societies. Oh, okay. Aristocracy is a form of government that places power in the hands of a small privileged ruling class of aristocrats. I mean, that's kind of what it is. I mean, an aristocratic oligarchy. That's America. Because it is the United States of America is run by imperialist interest. That's what it's like. All of and we just be honest about this. Let's just be honest about it. You look at the government and you look at the decisions that they make, and what is it based off of? Is it based off of the will of the people? No. What is it based off of? Imperialist interests, like capital gain, global capitalism. Let's be honest here. So I would definitely not say that America is a strong, complex republic. And then Scientific Glass Guy, hello. From Democracy to Freedom by, okay, you're recommending a book. Crime Ethnic talks about this concept of what democracy is. Worth a read. Okay, cool. Now, let me ask, I wrote some questions down that I would like to address. Let me look them up. I will go to my video right here, but I'll pause it. Don't say nothing. Pause. Excellent. All right, so I just want to do the description. Okay, so I could ask, how best should a republic be run? How best should democracy be implemented? What is the difference between a democracy and a republic? Okay, yeah, we did talk about that. How can both forms of governing be combined to create a healthy society? What are the weaknesses of a republic and democracy? Yeah. Are there better forms of governing? Should the best society even have a governing system, period? Okay, so we'll get into those things. But I see some chats going on, so let me see these chats. And then Jeremy says, that's unsurprising to me. If Plato was revived and learned English, he would loathe this country. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, he probably would. He probably would criticize. Yeah, he'd probably be one of those critics that you would, yeah. It's probably true. And then we got, I'm just going to say AE. Which is worse, oligarchy, dictatorship, or feudalism? I don't know. They're all equally bad, I guess. I don't know. I guess dictatorship would be like the worst, because dictatorship is literally like one person. Oligarchy, I only say like dictatorship is worse than oligarchy, because basically the country I live in is an oligarchy, and that's not as bad as a dictatorship. So that's my. And feudalism is, I mean, which is worse? Yeah, so dictatorship. And then Vates grad, good evening. Jeremy says his book warned the world about the corruption, about nature of wealth, luxury, and money. Yep. I mean, I don't know. I think that might have been a well-known fact before Plato wrote that book. But wealth, luxury, and money that messes people's up. It can mess people up. And then Cyborg responds to AE. I think they're all not in the best interest of the people in working class. There isn't a need to compare. Right. I would say that. Okay, so there was a question that I brought up that let's talk about that, or I'll bring it up. Is like, what is the weaknesses of a republic and a democracy? And I talked about this in another, I think it was several videos. I think it was like at least 2 past videos. One person brought up, I remember. Yeah, I'm trying to remember specifically where I first heard about it. But it's the idea that, so in democracy, majority rules, right? So the problem with that is, well, what about the minority, right? The minority will never get what they want in a democracy, theoretically, right? Right. So is the minority less important than the majority, right? How does the minority get what they want, right? So that's when you throw in the republic. The concept of the republic is like, okay, what about the minority? So we're gonna, like, the minority will get a representative, and the republic a republic is a representative government. You pick a representative that represents a group of people, and then they go to the people in charge, their group, and they advocate for their group of people. All right, so that's the concept. That's the theory. And theoretically, that's what the United States is, right? United States is that, right? You have a representative that's like represents the minority, and they push, they put their group in the forefront of the government. Said, okay, we know there's this majority rule, but I have some power to push these wants from my group, right? That's the idea, right? But it doesn't work out that way, right? It doesn't work out that way. Let me see the chat. Jeremy says, somewhere in book 1 or 2 of the Republic talks about injustice being profitable, injustice being unprofitable. Yeah, and then first you gotta also think about, like, what do you mean when you say profitable? Like, yeah, so financially profitable, right? I guess, and profitable for who, right? Profitable for who? Right? That's the other thing. It's like, because justice, injustice could be unprofitable for some people, but profitable for other people. So you really gotta delve deep into that. And then I think one weakness is that the Republic placed people in categories. Okay. I think the Republic focuses too much on creating categories, which stifles creativity and freedom. What do you mean? Putting people in categories? Like, what kind of categories? You mean like social categories? Like race and ethnicity and gender and stuff like that? But yeah, I'll just say, like, for example, we just had it's like I think it was like 2.5 months ago, 2-3 months ago, in the city where I live, we had a mayoral election, and I think it was like. We had a very low turnout. I almost want to say, I think it was like 3%. It must have been more than 3%. But I think the winner, the person who won the mayor got 3% of the vote, right? I believe like 13% of the population actually voted, right? Which is, so what does that mean? Well, first of all, that means, like, okay, that's not indicative of a representative democracy, right? You might say, like, and you could say all types of things. You could say like, well, that you had a chance to vote. Well, did they? Did you have like? Obviously, you didn't have a chance with like 85% of the population didn't vote. Like, it's not just like laziness or like a lack of opportunity. I mean, yeah, it's a lack of opportunity, right? Is what's going on, or is misinformation, or like in the United States of America at least, but in also many countries, right? There are intentional things that are put in place that make voting hard, make voting difficult for certain kinds of people, for certain social economic groups, right? And so that interferes with the representative nature because the people that get voted as representatives do not actually represent the people, right? I would argue like our current mayor does not represent me or like my neighborhood. The person that got elected mayor used to be in charge of the commission that ran the downtown district of our city. And the downtown district of our city had this agenda. They're trying to make downtown area more luxurious, and they're trying to make the real estate over there more valuable, more profitable. They're just trying to make it more bougie, basically, and that's been going on for a while, right? And so now that person who was in charge of that is now the mayor. So the interests, like, what are they representing? They're representing real estate. they're representing, luxury. They're representing, an agenda of make a property value. Are they actually representing what people in the community want? Right? I would argue no, right? And so that's what's happening. That's what's going on. And so here we have these weaknesses, or these flaws in our republic, right? In the United States' republic. Let me see what else is people saying. Okay. So Jeremy says, Plato talked about the roles of guardians, women, slaves, children, and so on, and how best to educate them. Let me see. Sorry, this is. Oh, I can see it now, and so on. That's what I thought. This is Icon. I keep talking about this. This is Icon that blocks the chat. But I got it now. And then you say, the Republic book does explore the issue of social classes and how much power some should uphold. Okay.
Chill out, dude.
So what do you mean when you say categories? It focused too much on creating categories. What categories are you talking about? Right. Roles of guardians, women, slaves, children. Yeah, it does do all that stuff. Oh, are you saying like the roles of guardians, women, slaves, children? These are all categories, and by creating these categories, that's what's stifling creativity and freedom. Is that what you're saying? I don't know. Please elaborate. And so as a result, right, when we talked about lots of people say like, these people don't represent me. and so we could talk about the issue of voting, about how there's so low voting turnout. And one could say like, well, you should vote, right? You should just get up on your ass and vote. But I would argue like, well, it's not easy to vote, right? It's not as easy to vote. And, as well, maybe you don't know. In the United States of America, there's active laws being created to make voting harder. Examples would be, in certain cities in the United States, if you wait in line to to vote, it's illegal to give somebody water.
You have to have ID, which means you have to have an address.
And then my wife said you gotta have an ID, right? So you have to have an address. So if you're homeless, you can't vote, right? And then some people, and then so what a counter would be like, well, homeless people shouldn't vote, so, and then that's so problematic, right? Because that's classism, right? And it's not like homeless people don't deal with the same social economic issues that other people. We all dealing in the same environment, so we all should have the opportunity to vote. And and then there's the whole thing of gerrymandering, right? Like sculpting these voting districts specifically in these weird ways that cater to that like devalue the vote of certain groups of people, like predominantly black communities are their vote is lessened, right? The count is like brought down because the districting is like mapped out in these really complex ways. There's all this stuff, right? So there's all these things, ballot boxes where people can drop off their vote and put it in a box. A lot in several cities, like that's illegal, right? There's no mail-in ballots for like that's just an illegal thing in many cities in the United States, which makes it harder to vote, right? So there's all these examples, and people will, because the whole thing is, well, you should just vote. It's like, well, why do we have all these laws that make it hard to vote, right? What's that all about? And so I think that's a valid argument where people will look at their United States representative, House representative, or their like state legislature, right? Or they'll look at their mayor, or and they'll look at their governor, and they look at these people, and it's like, these people don't represent me. They don't, like, what they're doing in office doesn't it doesn't help this current situations that I'm in, right? And so what can be done about this? And then what's going on here in the chat? Jeremy says the categories in which Plato explicitly said tasks where people are fit to perform something like that. Yep, that's bad. Now, because people can do all types of things, but I would not take Plato's definition of the republic as the only definition of a republic, right? I would, so he does focus heavily on categories, but I would like push back, which, I think like in philosophy, that's another problem that that philosophy has, right? I'm looking for, oh yeah, right, the philosophy book's over there.
Which book you want?
Just any generic, but it don't matter. It doesn't. It just says I was gonna use it as a prop or something. Oh, okay, maybe this might not be the best example. Like a more
Here's the Republic.
Yeah, like a more stereotypical philosopher. Okay, so wow, it's so behind. Let me go to my OBS here. See, that's caught up. See, we have I did a video on this, the Republic. So we think like, okay, I'm gonna read the Republic by Plato. Okay, now I know everything about the Republic, and everything that Plato says about the Republic. That's what a republic is, right? And you might, but it's okay to disagree and say like, okay, no, there's some problems here, and like, okay, maybe that's not what a republic should be. But in philosophy, people wave their fingers at you like, well, no, Plato said this and Plato said that, therefore, that's a republic. And if you're saying like, for example, the emphasis of categories, maybe like that shouldn't be this fundamental aspect of a republic. And people would be like, well, no, but Plato said that this is like, well, no, Plato was wrong in that regard, which is totally fine. And that's part of philosophy, is to, absorb these ideas and say like, okay, like it's a conversation, which is why I started doing the live streams, right? It's not just reading and saying and just regurgitating. It's like it's interacting with the ideas and pushing back, even with these greats. Of course, like all the greats, Plato, Aristotle. Somebody I just saw a comment with Hegel. All these people, Descartes, like they all had like really bad ideas too. Like all of them had extremely bad ideas. Like not just like a lot of they all had very good ideas, but every single one of these people also had extremely horrible ideas too, right? And so like these people are gods, right? So when we talk about the Republic, and we could also like talk about, well, what do you think about how a republic should be, and that is valid for the Republic too. And so like, yeah, I would push back about the categories and say like, well, maybe that's not what makes a republic good. Right. Let's see. And then Cyborg says, two big issues are, one, voting is 100% intentionally made difficult. True, especially for marginalized people. Absolutely. Two, no matter who you vote for, they work for the same systems that aren't for the people. Hello. That's why I always joke. I'm saying like, yeah, I can never be mayor. Right? I could, like, if I were, I would run for, like, let's say I ran for mayor, right? Okay, I'm running for mayor. Like, I'm for abolishing police. Like, that would immediately disqualify me. Like, who would vote for me at that point? Or like, I think we should, like, in my city, like, city taxes, no money goes to education. Absurd. I would say, like, all the money that goes to, like, let's take 90% of the money that goes to police officers and put that into education. Right? Who would vote for me at that point? I would hope like some people would, but some people are so obsessed with. I table and go to like communities, and I talk to people about police abolition, and I go to like black communities, like low wage workers, working class people. I was like, I think we should abolish police. They're like, are you nuts? Are you crazy? We need more police. I mean, people will talk up to me and they'll say, this should be a military state. Black people have told me this, like low wage workers, bus drivers told me this, right? Now, like what's going on here? There needs to be more political awareness. There needs to be like, education campaign. It needs to be like, people need to like get out of that propaganda machine. They call it copganda. Like you got like, people need to be, it's an educational thing, right? But I see what you're saying. It's like, if you were to run for a political office, you can't do that. You can't be like making people more politically conscious, because like now like the system, the government system here in the United States is just not. They're just gonna like eject you. You're not gonna stand a chance, right? So I see what you're saying. It's true. And then Cyborg 2.0 says, people idolize philosophical thinkers and just famous people in general too much without being actually critical of their work. Yeah, and that's another reason why I started the YouTube channel. I was like, why don't I just like kind of show that? People will get offended. An example was when I was reading Hegel. And Hegel is like, he's racist, right? But, he's racist to the point like, well, everybody felt that way. And then some people, at that time, which is no excuse, but it makes perfect sense, And I'm not saying like Hegel, he had like, so we should just reject everything Hegel said. I'm not saying that either, which is another problem that we have. It's like they have some problematic ideas. It's like, all right, well, throw the baby out with the bathwater. They're like, no, let's not do that. But and then some people will say like, well, Hegel existed before America and there was no such concept of black. It's like, yeah, but he would say things like Africa has no history. I mean, he says that. He says Africa has no history. He says like, basically he says everything in Africa just doesn't matter. Like he says things like that. It is like, to me, that's racist, right? And it is stupid. Like, it's a bad idea. Like, and I don't have a problem with using the word stupid because I say stupid things all the time myself. Sometimes you can be intelligent and say stupid things. True, that's the thing that you can do. And so, like, I remember I was saying that, and people were like, they got highly offended. First of all, like, why are you getting highly offended? It's like, is he like your brother or something? Like, he's a guy that, like, but they bought into the whole idea of like, well, I'm a Hegelian, and they would get upset. Like, he did say, and I would literally read like the text that he says it, and then they couldn't say nothing. That's why I like to read the books, because it's like, oh, he didn't say that. Oh, actually, he did. He said it here, here, and here, and here. And they're like, oh, well. And then they'll start doing the mental gymnastics. they'll be like, well, it's impossible to be racist, like I'll say it, because, the racism was invented by British people to justify colonial. It is like, well, no. But it's true. And then Jeremy says, finally, you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. About the categories thing. It's true. And so the other thing I wanted to bring up was, are there better forms of governing, right? And so some people will say, like, they'll look at the system that we have, and they'll be like, there's no hope for this, and so that's where political theories like anarchism comes in. It's like, the best society should be a society where there is no government. Right. And so, like, and there's anarchists I talk to, they don't even believe in democracy. Right. Not all anarchists are like that. That's another thing. Like, who, these categories of thought are not monoliths. There are many anarchists who do believe in democracy. I'm buddies with them, but some of them actually don't. They're like, yeah, no, democracy is just a thing that just doesn't work. People should just do whatever they want, and like, and they'll get into the whole like how, and I'll be like, well, how is that going to work? This is this thing about consensus, and I'm like, well, isn't consensus a form of democracy? Like, well, no, and yeah, and you'll get into all of that. But the whole idea is like, well, we should just not have a government, and so I asked the question: is should the best society even have a governing system? Period. You also get into the like political theories like Marxist-Leninism, where they also don't believe in a democracy because they just feel like, certain people just aren't going to get it. They're just never going to get it, right? So the people who are just not going to get it, they just need to step aside and let the people who get it, they're the ones that need to be in charge, right? But then you start asking questions, well, like the whole Watchmen thing, like, well, who watches the Watchmen? Because they are into the whole like, well, we gotta have a vanguard, and of course they got this whole theory behind it about like, well, the vanguard, goes to the masses, and they get the concerns of the masses. They bring that back to the vanguard. The vanguard makes a decision. They go back to and then there's this whole check and balance system, right? For me, it's just it's the whole like, again, political awareness thing, where it's like what I was saying with the police abolition, and people are like, even like the people who are targeted the most by police, and the people who are victims of police corruption the most, I met people who are like, yeah, we should have a military state. We should have more sheriffs. So for me, that's like, so some people be like, yeah, those people are just not gonna get it. Like for me, it's like, no. What's happening is like there's education is not, first of all, public education is just horrible here. But then also like, all types, like what I was saying, propaganda. Sometimes I go to the laundromat, right? The laundromat, and they have the TV the TV on. We don't really have a TV at the house that's just playing television shows. But if you just turn on like regular broadcast TV, all it is cop shows. Sometimes I get surprised. I'm like, hey, I forgot how many cop shows there are. There's like CSI Miami, CSI SVU, like Law and Order Victim Unit, like Law and Order, like Miami, NCIS. Like it just keeps going. It's like 3-hour blocks of like primetime television. It's just cop show. FBI, produced by Dick Wolf. I'm like, wow, that's still guy still producing shit. Like I ever see this day when I was like a little kid. He must be like got gray hair and shit. But or maybe the company's just named after him. But yeah, so people look at that and they just like they're just like, oh, cops are always that's just a fact of life. But we need to people need to push back, right? We need to plant the seeds into people, and I think minds could be changed in that way, right? Yeah, so that's how I feel. Like that's the start of making a good republic. Let's go back to the chat. Okay, Cyborg says they have to go. Okay, see ya. Nice conversation. Thanks for holding the space. Neil, later, y'all. Okay, see ya. And then Jeremy Borno says, to further clarify, Plato talked about the way individuals are to be assigned tasks based on their own abilities. Yep, he did talk about that. And then Zoltar says, religious thinking and idol worship. It's true. Don't want to go into that rabbit hole. And just to bring that up, because that's an important point you bring up. Religious thinking is kind of like how people can't see the issue in Israel and the Palestinian conflict. They can't see the complexity of it because their religious thinking is blocking them. Because we have this weird, in America, as many of y'all know, there's this whole weird Christian obsession with Israel, and it's all just based off of imperialist capitalist game, right? And it's just they just use that as this front, but it's this idea and it goes to fundamentalist Christian thinking where it's it leads up to Judgment Day and the second coming of Christ, where Israel has to I know I have that book over here, fiction. Where is that book? Oh, here it is. Have you seen this? I found this book on the floor, on the ground when I was walking my dog. Bring it up. But what's the New York Times bestsellers? Left Behind. They made a movie out of it. Wife's laughing. They turned it into a movie. It had Kirk Cameron was the main character. Kirk Cameron is the actor that was in Growing Pains, that old school 1980s sitcom. He's I'm sure many of you know. The guy is this hardcore evangelical fundamentalist Christian, which is kind of crazy when you look at that show. You're like, wow, the hell happened to this guy? But it's funny, you see people on TV, you have no idea how they are in real life, right? But and it's a Left Behind. It's about it's one of the worst movies. It's a book. The book isn't that good either. The movie is one of the worst movies ever made. Right? It's so bad, just technically, the cinematography is horrible. The storytelling is horrible. But it was very popular because it went along the whole lines of this concept of Israel is this the last place where the Antichrist will rise and he'll oppose Israel, and then that will spark this whole rapture thing, and then the rapture will happen, and then after that, like, Jesus will come, and then all the Christians will be beamed up into heaven. And by the way, none of this is mentioned in the Bible. None of it, right? It's just like all made. But people believe this shit. And as a result, we have these hardcore, like, people who are for, like, the state of Israel, which is this colonizing state, the state that's colonizing Palestinian land, right? And, like, highly oppressing these Palestinian people, stealing their land, much like, very similar, and, this is not unique to Israel. Like, United States did this, but British people stole Native American land, and same shit, right? And then they use, like, religion to, like, justify it in these weird ways, right? Not even straightforward, like, just very weird, like, like I said before, mental gymnastics, right? It's crazy. So I hear what you're saying with what was him? Somebody said religious thinking, Zoltar, in idol worship. Exactly. Like, a lot of this is due to that. A lot of this, like, dysfunctional governing and this, like, failure of democracy has to do with this, this fundamentalist religious thinking, which is sad. But it's true. We gotta face facts. We can't be like the guy in the cave. When we see these things, we can't be like, oh, fuck it, I'm just gonna, like, chain myself back up. No, we can't be like that. Right? And so Plato had a point there that he had a good idea there too. And then Jeremy Borno says, I think the best society lies in all people being intellectually active and learning about all subjects and fight out prejudice and hatred. Right. And so, like, I always argue that's why education in the United States is so abysmal. It's so abysmal, right? Public education in the United States is highly underfunded, as many of us Americans in the chat know. And then if you want to go to, like, higher education, college, universities, you have to pay, it costs a fortune. Like, most people can't afford it, right? And why is this? Is this because we have a broken system? No, it's by design. Like, I would argue, is an uneducated populace is an easily controlled populace, right? And so, like, we're susceptible to things like propaganda, where we're just like, oh yeah, I guess the cops are supposed to. Because they don't, when we're in school, we don't learn, like, critical thinking, and we don't learn, like, reading comprehension skills, or, like, understanding, taking in information and data analytics and things like that. Like, we just learn what we need to learn to be laborers for corporations, right? And that's all that we need to learn, right? And so, no, I agree. And then, Jeremy says, people must have a natural duty in recognizing bias and preconceived notions and unlearn them. True that. Yeah. People must have a natural duty. I think that's important. I don't know, natural duty. Sure. But that's what people should do, I think. And Mastermind, hello, says, do you feel without some form of government we would end up like Mad Max situation? No, I think we're headed toward a Mad Max situation with the government that we have, right? With as we go forward with this climate change issue, right? So. Not necessarily. I just think we should be in a society where people care about each other. Government or not. Like, before we even talk about government, let's, like, talk about, like, kindness and compassion, right? Let's establish that first and foremost, right? Because you can have the most, a very, like, stable government, but if people don't give a shit about anybody, then you will have a Mad Max situation, right? So yeah, I don't think so. Totally anarchy would encourage organized vigilante groups. I mean, it depends on what type of anarchy you're talking about, right? I always bring up the example of the group that I'm a part of called Food Not Bombs. That's an activist group. It's an anarchist group, by the way. And we do mutual aid feeds every other week on Saturday in a public park. We feed people. And it's a vegan group too, right? So we make vegan food, and where do we get the food? We get it from organizations like eateries, groceries that would just throw it away. 40% of all food that's produced is just thrown out. Meaning, like, there should be no hungry people, right? There's this idea like we have a lack of resources. That's why people are struggling. No, it's just because people are struggling because it doesn't serve capitalist gain. Right? That's why. So we feed people, and we give them warm clothes. People donate us clothes because it's wintertime, and hygienic products. All these things that were just given to us for free. We even set up refrigerators outside when we build shelters around them, so it protects them from the weather elements. And people can just open up the refrigerator, take food that they want, and put food that they want to donate. Just put in there. It's just the refrigerators staying. There's 4 of them in our city right now. We help manage that, and we're an anarchist group. Right, we're organized. We just don't believe it. Just in our group, nobody's in charge. There's nobody nobody has more power than anybody else. Like, how do we make decisions? Consensus. So he's like, oh, I think somebody would be like, I think we should do this. Okay, let's talk about it. Right, and we'll just discuss it, and we'll be like, okay, we've come to a decision. Right, it's that simple. That's anarchy right there. That's a version of anarchy that's very. It works, right? It definitely, we have no vigilante groups in Food Not Bombs, right? And we actually we do a lot of positive things, and it's anarchy. So I don't know. I mean, it just depends. And then Zoltar the Magnificent says, Kirk Cameron told us about the miracle of the banana and the evil of evolution. Right. Right, he would do those things on TV. Yeah, I was gonna say what a weirdo. I just say that because I remember watching the reruns. I mean, when he was making the show, I wasn't even born yet, but I always saw to see the reruns. Yeah, just like a nice sitcom, Growing Pains about a family. And then you see him now, it's like, whoa, dude. It's funny when you see that. When you see that, another guy that's like that is the guy that played. There was this TV show that was very popular in the 1990s, Hercules. You recall it? Maybe, if you're from that era. Hercules. And the guy that played Hercules, Kevin Sorbo, same situation. He's this weird fundamentalist Christian guy that he doesn't believe in evolution. He thinks all Muslims are evil. And he publicly talks about that. It's like, whoa, dude, where did that come from? But that's just telling you, you don't know somebody. You see somebody on TV. And, when he was playing Hercules, none of that was apparent. He was just playing some, Greek god person. They didn't talk about any of that stuff, right? But then you see him in real life. So it's kind of like, what do you call it? It's not called the Uncanny Valley, but I always get, weirded out by that. Whoa. I did not picture that from you, but, yeah, you just don't know people. And then Renegade Cut demolished the Rapture very well in the videos a few years back. Okay. We need a world system that helps us recognize prejudice and live together as human beings first. Recognizes prejudice. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yep, that's true. I just think we just need to care about each other. And another example of the Food Not Bombs thing is, when we were giving food out in the park, it's a public park, right? We were confronted by law enforcement. They say, you can't do that. You need a permit. And we're like, you need a permit to give out free food in a public park? what kind of sense does that make? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But it does make sense if you think about, like, you live in a society where people don't give a shit, are encouraged to not care about each other, right? Like, you should encourage people to give free food. Like, you should make it as easy as possible. But the reason why they don't want us to get free food, because there's all these nice restaurants, right? And people are like, well, then they're not going to go to the restaurant. Also, we're feeding homeless people. So that's drawing, people are seeing like, oh, there's actually homeless people here. And like the people that are in charge of the luxury real estate, they're like, oh no, this is very unsightly. We can't have this. But it's like, so what's more important, property or human beings, right? And I think we just need to get fundamental. We just need to go there, right? It's funny, with the philosophy, we get into all this jargon, and we talk about all these like complex ideas, the dialectic materialism and existentialism, and like the eternal recurrence and all these like jargon words, and then we talk about oligarchy and anarchism and capitalism, and it's like, dude, like, can we just fucking talk about, I just want to be kind to somebody. I just want to be compassionate to somebody. Like, that, it's just that simple. It's just that simple, right? So when we talk about like how best should we form a republic or a democracy, well, we need to do it in a way that is conducive to kindness and compassion. It's just that. You might say like, well, you got to make it more hard. You got to like, how is that going to be done? And of course, we could talk about that. We could talk about like, because you do need to plan it out. And you do need to talk it through, and and it is a complex issue. But I think oftentimes we do get lost in the complexity, where people like, you'll start doing stuff like, okay, well, now we need to focus on like, what's the difference between a republic and a democracy? Is like, okay, I don't want to spend time doing that. Okay, what I want to spend time doing is like creating a society where people give a shit about each other. I don't want to like argue about semantics. I know like somebody asked that. I'm not trying to diss that question. Like, that's a good question, but that's not important, I would argue. And then Jeremy Borno says, an excellent system would eliminate concepts of superiority and inferiority and embrace complexity and flaw in humanity. Yeah, that's true. Superiority and inferiority. White supremacy and all that. And then I would just ask, like, why is there such things as superiority and inferiority? Like, why does that exist? And then, and then I would get like kind of Marxist in that. And I would say like, is it like a pride thing? Is it an ego thing? No, I would argue like, well, when you can develop like, because then you could justify like exploiting people. So like slavery, for instance, you're doing something extremely horrible. How do you justify that? Well, you would just say like, well, these people are inferior. Right. So really what's happening is, the exploitation is right. It's the greed. And so really like we need a world system that points out when people are getting exploited, and like points out the nature of greed and how like people will just do anything. When they, there's some people who, it doesn't matter how horrible this, they'll just justify. I think superiority and inferiority like comes from that. It doesn't start there. It's it's like, why are you doing this? It's like, well, I just want that luxury real estate. So I'll push these homeless people aside, and then you have this concept of homeless people inferior, business people superior. But where did that come from? It came from that greed of having that luxury, having that status of luxury, right? Which is like, okay, what's more important, your possession of luxury or like this human being that's, so I think we gotta point those out. Again, like, that's the allegory of the cave. Like, what's really going on is like, it's that. People don't want to confront that. They're like, is it really that? I never. And so I don't know. Some people might disagree, which is fine. Which is fine because I remember I was with another group of people, and I was talking about that, how we got kicked out, and they're like, what is it like? Is it do people really do that? Like, do people really kick out? Like, yeah, people like literally like the people were like they couldn't comprehend that kind of thing was happening. Like there was people who were willing to do that. I'm like, y'all gotta wake up. I'm sorry, like you gotta wake up. You gotta like understand that that's what's happening. You can't be in the allegory of because then you can once you understand that that's happening, that now you can start like actually solving the problem or addressing the core issue, right? It's like how do we solve the problem of homelessness? It's like, well, we got to give people opportunities to have jobs, or we need to like give these people this, that, and the other thing. No, what you need to do is you got to stop like prioritizing property over. I mean, that's what you have to do over people, right? That's what you got to do, right? We got to be like, maybe it's just not worth building that building when we got all these people. Maybe we can just have a plain ass building, and instead have these people eat. How about that as a concept rather than like, oh, we got to hook these people up with jobs because they need to work, and it's like, no, it's like, yeah. Anyway, what is this? Jeremy Borno says an excellent. Okay. Then you say, I come from the perspective of pushing or breaking social boundaries for greater tolerance and acceptance. Okay. I agree about just caring about people. Okay. Breaking social boundaries for greater tolerance and acceptance. Oh, social boundaries like class. Like, like with homeless people, you're rich, poor. It's all artificial, social boundaries, but I'm sure it's just, yeah. I don't even like to think of it like that. But yeah, I mean, that is what you're doing. I just talk to a lot of homeless people, and it's, yeah, and it's like, there's no, and then you come to realize you talk to homeless people, and it's like, there's no boundary here. You're the same as me. The only thing is like, I had a safety net, you didn't. That's the only thing, that's the only difference. It's like, oh, they made the wrong decision. It's like, no. It's like they just didn't have a resource and I did. But it's like, you're just as intelligent as me. So, oftentimes you're more. Right? It's like, that's the only difference. So that's all I'm saying. Like, can we just like acknowledge the humanity in every single person? Right? Can we just do that instead of like I see what you're saying, Jeremy, with the categories where Plato fixates too much on categories. It's like, yeah, maybe you should stop fixing and just like acknowledge like human beings are just human beings, and we're all basically the same. We have all these differences, but the categories are just artificial. Right? We're all in this together. So that's what I would say about republic and democracy. It could work. It just this degree thing. So like what we were saying, how it's broken. Like our representatives do not actually represent us, and that's not because we it's a flawed system. It's like that's how the system was designed, right? And so you'll say like, well, we need to abandon the system. Sure. But we also, maybe we could just like use the system in a way that actually, caters to people. And you might say like, well, that's just not going to happen. Well, like you're saying, like make it easier to vote, meaning like, okay, let's just not pass. Because if 90% of people voted, right, we would have a very different outcome. We would have people that actually represent us, right? But when it's like less than 10% people who vote, yeah, I mean, you're gonna have, some people who don't represent our interests, and we got to get out of the whole notion of, well, it's their fault for not voting. It's like, no, we do live in a society that makes it hard to vote, and that is part of that is a systematic thing. But like what we were saying before, we need to get out of that cave and realize, like, oh, it's not like, because the system advertises power to the people, but that's not actually what's happening. And it's a systematic thing, but it's also just like we're just lied to, right? We're told these things, but they're not actually happening. Just like when I go to police abolition again, and I say, like, the police don't, the idea is police keep you safe. Like, no, that's not what police do. And so, like, if you want to have a system of safety, then we need to create a system of safety, right? But the police aren't that system, right? And it's not like, oh, the system is broken. No, it's like, that's the original. The police exists to maintain and manage the property of rich people, and that's how the police have always been this way. And so when you think about safety, right, you just need to create that kind of system, right? And we could go on with this. And so that's the thing with the republic and democracy. Let's see if I have any more questions in what I was asking. Let's see. How best should we? How can both forms of governing be combined to create a healthy society? We talked about this. Are they better for? Okay. Yeah, I think I've addressed all the questions. Let me see if we got any more chats. Just checking here. Cool. I think we've done with all the chats. And so we'll conclude here. Right? But we'll end the stream here. But you can always continue the discussion in the chat below. Just keep it rolling if you so choose. But I would like to thank you for watching. It was a lot of fun discussion. And I'll see you next time. Peace out. You've been watching The Black Ponder. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.